Every day, we go through the motions, doing our jobs, living the new normal, and trying to keep it all together. Hi, I'm Amber Craft, and this is the Afterthought, a podcast designed to light your internal fire as we speak with those who have been in the trenches and dug their way back out. So sit back and relax, because you're not going down this road alone anymore.
I hear you breathe, but I can't see if you're right here next to me. Something's wrong, wasn't it fun? Is it now we're done? You get dressed, I look a mess, and you tell me to confess, and you tell me to confess.
All right. Hi, I'm Amber Craft. This is the Afterthought Podcast. Today I have with me Alexia Chamberlynn. She goes by A.A. Chamberlynn with all the books she has written. So first, let's tell everybody who you are and how you got into writing.
Okay. And first, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. So, as far as getting into writing, it's kind of just something that I've been doing almost my whole life. I think I started writing little stories when I was a kid, and my uncle writes books, kind of like creative nonfiction, sort of like local history type things. And so I must have, I guess, picked it up from him. And so I remember, I think being like 12 when I was like, I'm writing my first novel. And it was just very, it was about horses, and interestingly, my latest series about horses in a way. But yeah, so it's just kind of always been a thing that I did. Tried to write. I never finished anything in my teens. I had several kind of failed half novels, if even half, and then sort of, had my son when I was younger, and then probably took about 8 or 10 years off of writing, and then sort of got back into it seriously probably about 10 years ago. So that's been kind of my journey in a nutshell. So yeah.
10 years ago, and you've written so many books.
Oh, thanks.
That's impressive. I gotta admit. Okay, so you went through and never finished one as a teenager. So what made you decide to take it more seriously 10 years ago?
So I think that I kind of, and I'll sort of preface all of this by saying I'm sort of a weird writer in lots of ways, that I don't have like the same, you'll probably tell as we go through this, but I just kind of always knew that I was a writer. There was never this like question of will I or won't I. It was just like when my son was young, it just simply couldn't happen. I was working full time when he was little, but I always knew I was going to come back to it. It was just, I don't even remember a time when I didn't know that that was going to be my path. And I still have a day job. I mean, so
yeah.
You gotta do that sometimes, but it was just kind of something I just always knew. And so it was just simply, I had finished up, I'd started my undergraduate degree before I had him, and then had to pause on that. And so, I don't know, I think I was around like 27 or something when I picked it back up, maybe a couple years younger than that, I can't remember. No, it was 27 when I finished it. So it was literally like the second I finished my undergraduate degree, I was like, it's time to get back on this. So like I'd been planning for it the whole year. I graduated in December, and I was like just jumping right in. So that was kind of just, the timing was just, I had to have some time to carve out for it. And, he was a little bit older at that point, so I was able to kind of, focus on it more. So
I definitely get that. I had just the military kind of cut into the middle of my writing, and that seemed to be when it went from hobby to serious. But yeah, I totally get that one. Since you started back writing, what's been your greatest resource to help you along the way, and how do you think other people could use it to help them?
Yeah, so I don't know if you mean that as in like a resource that, some people have a favorite book or website or whatnot, but for me, it's really kind of more of an internal thing, which is that, and like I said, I'm kind of a weird writer in this way, but I know so many writers suffer with like just crippling doubt while they're writing a first draft, and just have a really hard time kind of pushing forward. And, a lot of that, am I really a writer? Can I do this and whatever? And to me, I think the biggest thing is just, and I'll admit I'm mostly a pantser, so, but for me, that kind of raw creative force is just my favorite part of writing. And I don't judge it at all. Like, I know my first drafts are going to be really ugly, and I just don't care. Like, I'm like, I just want to get this out, you know? And so I don't, like, I've written all sorts of different ways as far as, like, you know, linear. I've at points stopped halfway through when I was stuck and written from the end of the book, wrote the final scene and back to the middle. I've done all kinds of crazy stuff. My thing is just keep moving forward, and I'll even put placeholders. If I get stuck on a scene and I'm just like, I cannot move past this, and I've thought about it for a couple of days, I put a placeholder and I just move on to the next part, because I know that after I kind of, especially in that first draft period, some things I'm going to know later, and I need the story to kind of unfold itself for me. I need the characters to kind of, because you're just getting to know them, especially if it's like the first book in a new series. And so it's like, I know that I just have faith that it'll come back around and I'll know how to finish that scene after I kind of, you know. Now, of course, doing that makes those books way harder to edit. And so I do prefer it when it all kind of unfolds really nicely, but I just don't sweat it so much if it doesn't. I'm just kind of like, you know what, I'm just going to move on. And so my biggest thing is just write fast, write ugly, and just edit it later. And I just really think, you know, my thing that, you know, if I can share anything with fellow writers is just as much as possible, just, you know, let go of judging yourself. Kind of, I'm a big hippie, so you know, love yourself, just like get it out. It's your creative force. You can just edit it like a million times later. And that's, to me, where I get really picky about, you know, word choice, and I'll agonize over sentences, and, you know, because I just want each sentence to really, you know, be as wonderful as it can be. And so, but I just don't worry about that at the first draft. So
it's more about having confidence in yourself and knowing that you can change it later.
Right.
I don't know what you mean about skipping around. I have tried that, and that was the most horrible first draft that I shelved and will never. I may end up splitting it into different books later, but I have to, my mind thinks straight to the story. So I applaud you for being able to do that. I can't, I don't know how people do that. Now, as far as I'm concerned, you're the queen of series. I mean, what was it, 4 series now? 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
I just started my 4th. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so crazy. How did you go from writing your first book and making it seem like that's what you want to do to deciding self-publishing over traditional? Because your covers are beautiful. You've got a plan to not mass market. What am I thinking? Rapid release, that word. So how did you choose one over the other?
So yeah, that's been a really interesting journey. So I definitely started out, because again, this was about 10 years ago that I jumped back into writing. And, you know, at that point, it was such a different just paradigm with publishing, and everyone wanted traditional, you know, and so that was definitely what, you know, I was, you know, aiming to do initially. And so, you know, I wrote my first book, you know, queried, and just went on that whole thing. Like, I've probably queried, I mean, I would say, because I queried and tried to get an agent for about 5 years, I would say that, I mean, I would not be surprised if I'd send out 500 different query letters for different books over the time or whatever. You know, and over various periods, you know, for different books that I was querying, I would get good feedback from agents, but a lot of times they'd be saying things like, oh, well, I love this, but it's just too similar to something else on the market. Or I love this, but, you know, just some other reason that, like, market-based reason. And so that was kind of when I think sort of the shift started happening. That's like, I'm not hearing that, like, either crickets, that, you know, because if you don't hear anything back, you know, that is kind of a good litmus test that maybe your book is not quite ready, you know, for, you know, if agents just aren't responding all. It was that kind of feeling that, like, they're saying this is good and they like it, but they're saying that it doesn't fit into their definition of the market. And traditional market, you know, the traditional market is just so narrow in a lot of ways, and, you know, and it's forward looking. Like, they have to look so far forward. Sometimes it's what's going to happen is not going to fit. Yeah. And it's just interesting because it's like they want something that's unique, but then I feel like at the same time they don't, because then if it's too genre blending, which I do tend to write things that are genre blending, then they're like, well, this doesn't fit, you know. So it's this weird, you know, kind of like, you know, they're looking for this unicorn. And, you know, and as we know, then there's a lot of things in traditional publishing where the book it's a good book, but it's not anything that is like, you're like, this isn't necessarily better than something that a good indie author is writing. And so I think that was kind of when things, started to shift, and I just got to where I couldn't write. And again, for me, like, I can almost always write. I've been writing in 2020 fine, when I know a lot of people have been struggling with that. Like, not a whole lot of things stopped me, but I got to where I was just like, couldn't write because I was so focused on what I thought would sell and trying to get an agent. And so I finally was just like, you know what, I'm getting off this merry-go-round of being unhappy, because I like to be happy. I seek happiness. And so I'm like, this is just, no, like, I'm not going to do this. And so I decided to self-publish. And this is where things got really weird. So so I decided to self-publish. I, moved forward, literally had the prequel novelette to my Zion Star series, which is the first series that I published, out on Amazon for pre-order. And then I landed an agent. It was one that I had queried like 9 months before for this other book. And then, she wanted to sign me. So it was just very strange. And it was, like, oh my gosh. And so it was really exciting and everything. But basically, and that was for Huntress Found, the second series I ended up writing. And so, so we worked together, and she was, because, publishing has this weird thing with like debut novels. I feel like it's like virginity or something. They need it to be intact, and like, it's just strange. But anyway, so she was like, well, you can't release like any full novels while we're on sub with Huntress, because then you ruin your debut status. And so then I was like, well, I've already kind of like announced this and whatever. So we kind of had this weird thing where she's like, well, you can release the books like in halves. I think I came up with the idea. I was like, well, what if I do a part 1 and a part 2? Just kind of a very weird, she's like, that's fine, just don't release a full length book. So I released the Zion series initially in part 1 and part 2. And so, just kind of move forward with that. And so then just fast forward like a few years, like, she didn't sell Huntress. And again, lots of amazing feedback from, the big 5, but it was just like all these market things like, oh no, well, the market's not right for this or whatever. We love it, but no. And, and then I wrote another book of Blood, Earth, and Magic, which is my only standalone right now. And then it was kind of the same thing with that. Lots of good feedback, but just, and so basically last year, I just decided, like, I can't keep straddling, because I felt like everything in my indie career was being held up by this, like, being on sub, trying to do traditional. And so I just finally was like, you know what, I'm just going to focus on my self-pubbing and really move forward with that, because everything had just been stagnant for a good 3 years or more, trying to wait on, these things. And so, so I just told my agent, I said, you're awesome, but, just going to focus on this. So let's, part ways. And, and she was, kind of offered, she's like, yeah, just, it's so hard to break in these days, and, keep writing and whatever. And so she was sweet about it. And, just, so that was kind of last fall. So really just over a year ago that I finally got kind of a clear path of like, and that's why I was kind of saying earlier before we started, like, I've had a weird kind of, I haven't really gotten that much into marketing until the last year. And so then my boyfriend's a writer as well. So then, and he's nice. Way better networking than I am. And so he had a friend, Susan K. Quinn, who's a super big, indie pub queen or whatever. And so she agreed to kind of mentor me and taught me kind of the ropes of her method for, marketing and things like that. So I feel like I'm still a newbie with that, and way behind a lot of these other kind of, indie queens that are just doing, and kings. But, I feel like definitely, since I write fantasy, it's definitely heavily slanted towards women. But, and the romance authors and everything, obviously more women. But yeah, so I feel like I'm still kind of a newbie and just getting my, kind of finally starting to get traction with becoming like an indie author, since I was sort of doing a weird hybrid thing for a while. So sorry, that was a very long answer.
No, you're fine. I mean, it explains, just looking at your resume of books, like, I was writing them all down, and I like to write what year and date they were written to see, what the pattern is. And I was looking, I was like, yeah, of Blood, Earth, and Magic. I was like, standalone ? Like, all these other series, and then you've got this standalone and a novella and a novelette. And I'm like, wonder why. There's got to be a story there. Yeah. And it tends to be that way. That, one of my MK Williams, she had a year where she didn't do a book. That's because she was doing someone else's. So there's always a reason. So do you write them all as one book and then split them up, or do you write each book individually?
No, yeah, I write them individually. So just, kind of, I usually I think my goal now is definitely from Susan and just other, indie, really successful indie authors. I mean, the whole thing series is where, kind of you can sort of start building a following and, actually not be a starving artist. And so, they say, you want to have at least like 6 or 7 books in a series and everything like that. So I think that the one that just launched, less than 2 weeks ago, For Horsewomen of the Apocalypse, that's my first one where I'm like, okay, I'm planning with my newfound, marketing knowledge, and that's an idea I had a good 3 years ago, but I had just had some other books that were in queue that I'd already sort of promised myself and others to write, like the Queen Chronicles, which is a spinoff from Zion Star. And so, I was like, this is going to be the first one that I apply my marketing knowledge, and, it's going to have 7 books in the series. I've only done 4 covers so far and, set up for pre-order for the first 4, but there will be 7 in the series. And so, so that'll be exciting. And, but yeah, I write them each individually and, just kind of go from there. But, and I have a rough idea of, where the series is going. But again, I'm sort of a pantser. So it's, I'm always even excited, not just willing, but excited to have my muse kind of be like, nope, we're going in this direction. So, yeah.
And I think that's the nice thing about being a pantser, that nobody, the author community, or if they're planners, are like, I just don't understand. I have to know the story. And I'm like, that's the fun of it, is you don't know the story. You know your characters, and you are able to give them the freedom of telling you where they want to go. You mentioned your covers. How do you write a series? You said you write, but you have the 4 covers, but yet only A War of Daisies is out right now. Mm-hmm. So what's your, I guess, timeline as far as the books and covers and getting them out?
Well, I'm lucky in that I'm able to write really fast. And so kind of tying in with what I said earlier about just, that kind of, I write fast and ugly and then I edit. So really kind of my, what I'm trying to do, and I'm trying to really amp it up since, again, a year ago, I, kind of got that full, that clear path to move forward. I really try to draft a book in like 4 to 6 weeks, and then I edit it in another 4 to 6 weeks. And so I'm basically doing sort of close to like nano, like every other month almost. So yeah, so I just, and, I'm able to just kind of write really fast. And so, and I know that doesn't work for everybody. So again, I guess that maybe I'm meant to be an indie author, because that is, a good quality to have with indie, because I guess with the algorithms, it's usually easiest sales-wise if you kind of release a book every 1 to 3 months. And so that's what I'm trying to, kind of ride that wave. And so, yeah, so I have, definitely the first 4 books plotted out pretty well. And again, I don't do super, I do a very light plotting, so I guess I shouldn't say really well, because I know some people do like 50-page outlines. I definitely do not do that. But yeah, so I went ahead and did, and really the reason I kind of did the first 4 was honestly partially just because it's like, I don't want to, that would have been really expensive to get 7 done all at once. So again, we all have a little bit of that. I haven't quite made it big yet. So, yeah, so I was like, well, the first 4, and also because it's the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse, I was like, that makes sense to kind of go ahead and do the 4 covers. You might have noticed the first 4 each kind of named after one of the writers. And so, so that was why I was like, I'll just go ahead and get those. And yeah, my cover artist is Steve Novak. He's amazing. And yeah, so we just, kind of worked together to, kind of put those together. And yeah, some books I feel like I need to know a little bit to have fully written them to do the cover, but in general, especially with, with marketing and kind of wanting to get them out there on pre-order, which is one of the things my mentor definitely pushes really heavily, is, having that pre-order, all lined up. In this case, yeah, I don't have all 4 of them written yet, but I knew enough of kind of how I wanted the covers to be just in my mind. And so I'll kind of, tell Steve, like, this is the genre. I mean, specifically within fantasy, because I do sort of urban and sort of contemporary, and this one's fantasy Western. And so, and I even will tell him sometimes if I have in my mind, I'm like, I want an element that's kind of like this. And, you know, so that's one of my favorite things. I love, like, you know, he obviously has the skill set for that because I don't have the actual, like, graphic skill set, but it's so fun just kind of like working with him to design it and then seeing what he comes up with. And it's, yeah, one of my favorites. It's like early Christmas every time, you know, we did it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting my cover one redesigned, or book one cover redesigned right now, and yeah, it's like pulling teeth, but like magic all at the same time.
Yes, that's a great way to put it.
So you've written all these series, but you had an agent. Did you get her after you wrote the Martinis and the Devil and that series? Because you said the novelette, so.
Yeah, I think I definitely had written Black Magic and Mojitos, which is the Zion Star prequel novelette, and then Martinis with the Devil, which is the first Zion Star book. But yeah, I'm pretty sure I had not at that point written Zion Star books 2 and 3, and then there's also a origin story novella for the Zion Star series, Sorcery and Sidecars. So those I think I wrote afterwards, because again, she was, you know, never involved with that series, and she was fine as long as I split them up and didn't do anything full length. So and then I think kind of the same with Huntress, because again, everything was very like sort of piecemeal. Like, you know, she had and you were totally right about on sub that, you know, we were on sub with the publishers for Huntress, and so then I didn't go back and write Huntress 2 and 3 until after, you know, it was a good amount of time after I wrote the first one, probably at least 2 years, maybe, yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
You know, until she basically said, you know, we, you know, ran out of options with that one, and so I was like, okay, well, I'm moving forward with self-publishing, and she's like, okay. And at that point, I think with that one, I did just go ahead and say, I'm just publishing the whole thing. Like, I can't remember. I must have had a conversation with her about that, but I was like, I'm not releasing this one in parts. So yeah, I think that was probably when I was kind of starting to shift towards like, okay, you know, like this is getting, because, you know, a bunch of people were like, why on earth are you releasing Zion Star in parts? And so I still, every now and then, come across old reviews that were like, I don't like this. And I'm like, yeah, sorry, it wasn't really my choice. But yeah, so it, you know, everything was very just discombobulated, kind of and disconnected. So it was really nice with the Quinn Chronicles. I, you know, started that about a year ago, but yeah, that one I was able to write, you know, just in 6 months, like the whole trilogy, and so that was just nice, and you know, that's definitely the plan with for Horsemen of the Apocalypse. So it's much easier. I will never go back, because I did have a really hard time writing Huntress 2 and 3, because I feel like the muse had just like left me. That was like a crazy experience with writing the first one, because like on the one hand, like I do believe in kind of like that creative whatever, but on the other hand, I'm very much of just put your ass in the chair and like write kind of person. So it's weird because I'm very like yin yang about it. Like I feel both ways. But like Huntress was like definitely, if like there is some creative force, like I was just driving one day. I used to live out in the country, and there was the neighbors had a whole bunch of hunting hounds, and I was literally driving past their farm, which I'd done, you know, hundreds of times before, because I'd been out there for years at that point. And all of a sudden, I just, the best way to describe it is the book was just like downloading into my brain. Like literally, it just started, I was like, started thinking about the Wild Hunt, you know, the fairy, you know, legends or whatever. And, you know, somehow the hounds made me think of that. But then it was like, just everything within hours, I had the characters, the plot, like it was just kept. And I remember driving around running errands being like, I hope I don't forget this, because like I couldn't stop and write it down. And I started writing it like that night. It was crazy. But then when I, you know, went to write books 2 and 3 a few years later, it was like that inspiration was like gone. So I had to like kind of force it more. And I am glad that I did, because I ended up loving how that series ended. But it was definitely more of a labor of love than just free love, I guess is how I put it. So, but yeah.
I mean, that makes sense, because, I mean, like I said, I write down the dates. So I was like, the novelette in the series order is at the end, but you wrote that first, and then there's a big gap between, you know, the Zion Star series, you know, 2016 to jumping to the Queen Chronicles in 2019, and then you've just been boom, boom, boom after that. Yeah. And like something happened, but it's almost like it propelled you into well, from this holding period to this I'm free, let's let it fly. Like,
yes.
And that makes sense with your personality.
Yeah.
So which one out of the 4 or the standalone have been your favorite to write, and why?
So the Zion series is definitely my favorite just because Zion is just so damn fun to write. Like, she's just sassy and kick-ass, and, you know, and that one probably is still, even though it's the first one I wrote, it probably is still so far the most fan favorite or whatever. So, you know, she's just so fun. And so it'll be interesting because I do want to write more in that series eventually. But yeah, so I'll be curious to see, because, you know, I'm a different, you know, we're all different human beings, and just, you know, every day and every year and as time moves on or whatever. And so the same thing with being a writer, it's like you evolve. And so I'll be curious to see like what comes to me when I sit down to try to write, you know, that and how that works out. But I will say, writing the Quinn Chronicles, although Zion is, you know, and Quinn is basically Zion's best friend, and so I knew when I finished up book 3, there's going to be a period where Zion kind of goes off and has to do some soul searching for a while and whatever. And then, you know, her best friends are Quinn and Riley, and they're going to be kind of off on their own adventures. But then there's going to be a little bit of anger, like, where'd Zion go and whatever. And so the Quinn Chronicles is just about kind of what Quinn and Riley do when Zion's kind of off doing her own thing, just because of how book 3 ended. And book 3 in the Zion series is very interesting for Quinn. I won't have any spoilers, but it's, you know, like, so definitely when I finished that, I was like, Quinn has her own total story here, because it's just really pretty crazy what happens. And so then just, I will say that Zion may or may not make an appearance in Quinn book 3. And that was so fun to write, like so fun that I was like, yeah, I think I can write her again. Like, I think, you know, I think it'll come back to me. And she's just, I don't know. And so I don't know what that says about my personality, and I'm fine with it because Zion's awesome, but she's just very like brash and, you know, whatever. And so my ex-husband said, she's like your darker side. So I'm like, I'm okay with that. You may not be, but it works for me. So, you know, yeah, she's pretty awesome.
Well, I think it kind of hints to something good happening. I mean, it's called Vengeance and Vermouth, book 3. So that's a pretty good combination, vengeance and alcohol. So I'm not going to lie, you had me with the book trailer for War and Daisies, so I'm reading that one. So I was like waiting for it to come out, and I like shot your name. Like, books were coming out the end of October like crazy, and I'm like, don't forget this one, like, show the cover. Like, you're on a few of the live streams, your book cover is so amazing. And I think that's how we connected. I was like, where'd you get the cape? Where'd you get the all the gear? Like, because it's such a well done, beautiful trailer, and as I'm reading the book, totally just has the feel of the book, but yet is its own beautiful thing. Like, they're two beautiful things separately, but they mesh well and complement each other so well. I'm like, okay, this girl's doing something. First, I need to figure out what it is and how she's doing it. Second, I need to talk to her about it. Like, I definitely see the transition of getting the advice, and you're already blowing up in my mind. Like,
oh, thanks.
I'm gonna help shout you to the heavens, because it's just the way you work. Now talking to you, knowing that you are able to skip around and everything, and yet A War of Daisies is written like I would write straight, you know, beginning to end.
I did write that one linear. That one came in easily. So I will say that's one of like the easiest books I've ever written, and challenging at the same time. It was weird.
So now I'm interested to read the other series and see, knowing that you did skip around, like, how does this book compare to the ones where she did skip around?
Yeah.
And pre-advice, post-advice, and so now I'm like thinking in my head of all these different angles of how you've written, and it just makes me more excited to read the other series. So.
Thanks.
But with you transitioning like that, what do you think's been your greatest failure or hiccup, and how you feel like you overcome it and learned from it to become better?
Well, I think it really was that whole straddling the fence, and just that, you know, between traditional and indie, and, you know, and I'm not even closing the door to traditional in the future, although I'll always be hybrid. Like, I love the control of like indie publishing, and so I'll never go like full traditional, just because I just love I love being involved in all of it. I even love marketing, which is weird, but you know. But yeah, I think that did just, you know, as you saw from, you know, my release dates and things like that, it just really did kind of chop everything up, and it just kind of, I felt very like stagnant in a lot of ways for years. And so that's just very frustrating, especially for me as a person, because I am a very like goal-driven person, and, you know, I'm impatient. I like things to, you know, happen in my life. And so it was a lot of like looking back, I'm like, man, I had the patience of a saint. Like that was just, you know, it was challenging. So, and, you know, and I think just, I would say, you know, then pivoting that to what I learned from it. I mean, I think that Susan, who I mentioned earlier, Susan K. Quinn, like she kind of, you know, I was still when she started working with me a little over a year ago, I was still on the fence about whether I would try to get an agent for Horsemen. And she was like, you can do what you want, but she was like, you know, you're just like, she's like, I have friends that are literally making 7 figures self-publishing their books. And so she was like, and when you do that, like you'll have agents, you know, come to you for audio rights. Because I mean, she had an agent just approach her about doing audiobooks and exploring like other rights and stuff. And she was like, you know, just with rare cases, like even with traditional publishing, you're not going to make the kind of money doing traditional publishing that you can make self-publishing. And not that it's all about money, but, you know, it gets a little bit hard when it's like, okay, so I can have complete control over my life and my career and make lots of money. You know, that gets to be a little hard to compete with, you know. And I think the only thing that I would miss as far as what I would still kind of yearning as an author, and, you know, I hope to write full-time one day. I mean, that's definitely a big thing. Like, I think all of us want to, but yeah, because it's definitely really hard working full-time and writing as much as I do, you know, and it's challenging.
And being a mom.
I just like a workaholic. That's the only reason I can probably get it all done, but I love working. But, you know, I think it's that I do want to like, and this may be just a dead dream because even traditional publishing is not doing this much anymore, but I want to go on like book tours and I want to just do fun stuff like that. And so that's the thing that I still am like, you know, I'd really like to do that one day, and I went off point again. But going back to the, you know, what I learned from that, I think it's just know what you want as a writer. Like, what are your goals? And then, because some people, if you don't want that kind of, you know, if you don't want to do the book tours and whatnot, then there's no reason why you wouldn't just want to self-publish, because these days it is just better, like, you know, as far as financially and everything like that. So, you know, and I just hear things from traditional where they're like, oh yeah, someone didn't, you know, earn out their advance, so they're just ruined. No one will publish them anymore and they're done and they can't write anymore. And I'm like, wait a second, they can write. Like, and I hate that feeling that people, I think, still get hung up on, like, you know, they can't write unless the traditional publishing world gives them permission. And that's just not the case. Probably heard people say before, like, they hesitate to call themselves a writer. And it's like, if you write, you're a writer. Like, an author is obviously different. And I'm sure there's plenty of people, because there's still kind of a stigma with self-publishing, that would say, oh, well, you're not an author because you publish yourself. So, I mean, you know, which I don't care. I call myself an author. But yeah, so I think that's just it. If my advice on that was, you know, it's just kind of decide what you want to do, follow your heart. And, you know, there's obviously some logic behind it too. Like, if you take, you know, if you need to take a couple years to write a book, which obviously is totally fine. Lots of great authors do that. You know, everyone jokes about George Martin, you know, Game of Thrones series. Like, you know, I mean, some people just take a long time, and that's fine. And that is probably does lend itself more to, you know, the traditional field. You know, it just kind of depends. And so, and, you know, if you hate marketing, if you hate doing that, then maybe indie's not for you. But I think it's just really kind of honing in on it and analyzing what you really want. And, you know, if you have the skill set to kind of put yourself out there, because if you do have like a lot of self-doubt, like self-publishing is probably gonna be really rough on you. Of course, writing in general probably is, because either way you get bad reviews. Like, everybody gets bad reviews. So
yeah. Bad reviews, imposter syndrome, you know, just thinking you're not that great from having betas, and you know, how harsh the criticism can be. And even when it's not, how harsh you are on yourself. Yeah. With that being said, what's the most important advice that you would give to people, either in your position or maybe the 10 years younger you just starting out, to help them get over the same type of hurdles?
Yeah, I think kind of in addition to some of the things, you know, about, you know, just kind of not judging yourself and, you know, kind of sort of trying to decide which path you want to go down. I think that probably the biggest thing from a marketing perspective, and Susan started a Facebook group, or whatever, which, definitely I would say like join like good, positive, like indie, groups or whatever that, you can get advice from people. Like I'm pretty much on, and hers is, Indies Together. And, I think there's around 1,000 members now, something like that. And, join kind of so where you can just kind of, because there's so much to learn. And so I think that it's just like, if that's your kind of chosen path, it's like, you need to just be around people that are, and again, when I say positive group, I'm sure there's plenty that are negative where people are just being jerks to each other, and like, don't do that. I don't think there's any, to me, if like if I find some toxic group, I'm like, peace out. Like I'm not dealing with that. So, but people that are really going to give good advice and, help each other out and kind of nurture each other. Her and some of the other people have a really good list of places to advertise. And, her big method is really heavy on kind of the newsletter advertising, like Free Booksy. And obviously everyone wants to get BookBub. That's what we're always trying to get all the time. So that's the big creme de la creme of like book advertising. But yeah, doing those, I think I made the mistake when I first tried to self-pub. I tried to do advertising, and a lot of it is just garbage. And so like I thought that all of it was, and I think it's not really all garbage. It's just you have to learn which ones can really get sales and everything. So that's probably would be what I would tell myself, is don't give up so quickly on like I thought I was like, oh, all advertising is just bad, and that's not the case. It just and then of course there's lots of people that swear by the click ads and like Amazon and, Facebook and stuff. I'm still kind of experimenting, but yeah, just kind of, I would say that the advertising, figuring that out.
Yeah, I've tried the Facebook ads, and it's great for bringing people to your channel, but I haven't really seen the correlation between bringing them to your platform and the book buying. So
exactly.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I'm having to learn. Is I'm revamping my website, so learning how to put newsletters and pop-ups and do all of that. I basically said my 2020 goals are now my 2021 goals because, this COVID has...
Oh, yeah, and this year's been rough.
I have a warehouse job, so it's driven by the world and what happens. So,
yeah.
Definitely I was just like, okay, I was going to blow up in this year, and it's just going to become this year because... it's just not happening.
Yeah.
Now, what is the one thing you wish you'd known when you first started writing and taking it seriously to now? What would have made life easier?
Well, I don't know. I'm one of those people that it's like kind of, I don't really consider things like mistakes as long as you learn from them. And so, but, I think that, it would have been nice if I hadn't spent so many years just trying to get an agent and really feeling like my value as a writer was tied to the traditional publishing industry. So I guess that, I have lots of friends that have traditionally published, so I, by no means do I, have objection to that or whatever. But I think that where I want to be the cheerleader for, indie publishing, because I think that there's still that stigma of, self-publishing not being legitimate writers, and things. And, and honestly, like I said, I used to think that years ago. And I think that, kudos to just all the, authors before us that have paved the way to make that to where, it's not, there's not nearly so much of a stigma anymore. And, because I just think it's not probably good in life to tie your worth to any one particular thing other than yourself. Like you're the one that decides. And so I think that that's probably what would have been helpful, is just knowing that like, I don't have to judge myself by this one industry that is so, narrow in lots of ways or whatever. And although I'm excited, with definitely the focus on like diverse books and everything like that these days, I'm hoping that will open them up for sure to just be more representative. Because I think the indie industry has really paved the way for a lot of the, people that are doing, diverse voice books or whatever. I think that indie really started that, and that's pretty awesome. So, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like indie's a way to bypass those gatekeepers that try to tell us what's popular when we're actually out here going, no, this is the kind of book me and my friends want. So I think we got a handle on this.
Yeah.
And, I think having, with your first book coming out 2015, I know, or the novelette, I tried to publish my first book, which may never see the light of day again, back in 2011. And the internet was not what it was today. I know that seems hard to believe. But to self-publish, there wasn't KDP and CreateSpace and Ingram Spark. And so you had to go through an agency. Mm-hmm. And it was almost like you said, having to straddle the what can I do versus what's going to hurt me if I don't do. And I will never get that money back because I spent almost $5,000 between getting the book done and the marketing and the cover. And most of that was like, here's your options. Here's option 1, 2, and 3. And here's what we'll do. And then you pay the money up front and then they don't do half of it.
Oh, goodness. Yeah.
So it's like the book was good. Yes, it needed changes, but you didn't do anything I paid you for. So give me my rights back. Give me everything back. I'm done.
Yeah.
So you missed that part of the struggle. So give yourself a little bit of a break there. So since you've been writing forever and you obviously have all these writing people around you, who's been, I guess, the most influential in your writing and your business and your learning and growth?
So I'll say, Susan's definitely been the most influential for my indie writing. I will say for, just for variety to put in kind of who's been influential, like my favorite author is Neil Gaiman, which, I know I'm not alone in that. And actually in, I think 2011, I went to World Fantasy Con in San Diego that year. And I had just started kind of, knowing who Neil was a little bit before that, and I hadn't read him yet. So I remember on the way, on the airplane out there, I was like, I have to read some Neil Gaiman because he's going to be at this conference. And it's a huge deal. And so I knew enough that to know he was a huge, big deal or whatever. And I needed to read him. And so, yeah, so it was so exciting. So I was flying out there oh my gosh, this is an amazing, I can't even remember which book I read first. And so then just, hearing him kind of at the con, because he's spoken a lot of different, kind of panels and things that he did solo, and he even kind of showed up to a couple of the after parties and mingled briefly and whatever.
Oh, nice.
That was kind of when I was okay, it just sort of solidified and, and then, of course, I started reading his blog and stuff, and I was I want to do this. I want to travel around the world and, kind of just do all this cool stuff. And I think what struck me about him is while he's a writer, he does a lot of different artistic collaborations just all over the place. And, and that was what was exciting about doing the book trailer that you were mentioning earlier, was that's the first time I've kind of ventured into a different sort of art form. And it was so fun. Yeah. So I would say he influenced me in that way, as far as being oh, okay, I can really see now and visualize what this author life can be like. But then, like I said, it was definitely, Susan K. Quinn, as far as just giving me really solid path for how do you actually make this into a career, and what are all the right marketing things to do. And again, I feel I'm still learning that and playing catch up from my weird limbo years. But yeah, she really has just a wealth of knowledge and everything. So yeah.
That's so crazy. You hadn't even read Neil Gaiman before you went out there.
It was terrible. I shouldn't have done that, but yeah.
But no, I think it's cool to be exposed to him right before you meet him, because then you have no preconceived notions of who he could be. It wouldn't be like reading, Stephen King. You don't have to read him to know who he is and how big and influential he is. So that's cool that you didn't have that preconceived notion. I definitely can't say the same for some of the people I read. I'd be expecting one thing and then totally going off of me you're not quite what I got.
Yeah.
What do you feel is the biggest misconception about being an author and the writing? What is one myth you just think needs debunking into extinction?
Well, and that is it. I just, even within traditional, I'm a very non-snobby writer. I don't like it when people get really uppity about it, and they're you have to read these people, and these are the only books that are good. And, there's so many genres. There's, commercial versus literary, because for instance, Zion Star, they are great, fun books. They're not going to win any kind of awards for they're fun commercial books, And I'm completely fine with that. Like, a lot of people diss on like the Twilight series, and her writing skills. I'm like, it was perfectly fine. Like, again, we're not talking about some great, it wasn't supposed to be a literary masterpiece. Like, there's just, and so I guess I would say that just like, there's just so much judgment in the, in the world, but especially within like, kind of book life. And it's like, whether you're traditional or indie, let's just all kind of respect each other and know that like, it doesn't matter, because people have a lot of different choices to make, for whether they want to be traditional or indie or a hybrid. And let's just not knock each other down. Like, we're all artists, doing our thing, trying to spread our stories in the world. And so that would be my thing. It's just, I want to, while it's gotten a lot better, I just think it needs to be thoroughly squashed, because people are like, oh, well, indie's gotten better, but, there's still just a bunch of crap out there. It's like, yeah, and there's a bunch of crap in traditional publishing too. So, I won't list specific examples, but anyways, there's just lots of really bad stuff. So, on both sides, and that's just life. So, that would be definitely my thing. It's just, I'm tired of not, of people kind of like looking down on it and acting like it's, whatever, because that's just not, the case anymore. And so it's, the paradigm has shifted, and people need to realize that that's just the case. So.
Yeah, I think it's so weird. Years ago, there was stigmas within traditional publishing, like you said, about people not meeting their quota to get their money back. And so they were just blacklisted. It's like, so one book didn't do great. What if the next one is, the next Mark Twain you didn't even realize? Like, why are you telling someone that they can't, that, unvalidating them basically, that they're not a writer because they didn't meet a certain number you expected? Doesn't mean they can't write. It doesn't mean that they're not great. It's just a book, one didn't take off. And then now we've transitioned, and like I said, the paradigm has shifted so totally to independent authors, that silent war going on that nobody knows who started, but it's there. But yet we're just off trying to do our own thing and be great for the people who said we couldn't.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's, if I was ever asked, that's definitely my biggest one too. So I totally get that. Now, this is one of my signature questions I ask everybody. If you've, for the audience, if you've ever listened to a podcast, you know what this will be. What is your favorite book that's either been turned into an adaptation of a movie, or that you would like to be turned into a movie?
Yeah, so I would say my favorite book ever is probably Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. And it is like a BBC miniseries, but and I don't know, it's one of those things. Yeah, these days, there is a benefit to, TV just, being able to really, do justice to a book, since there's, just more film time. It's not compressed into like an hour and a half or two, but yeah, I would like to see that kind of, a new version of that. I would say probably my very close second favorite is The Scorpio Races by Maggie Stiefvater. That's just, gosh, that book just touches my heart, because it is horses and magic, and just kind of like an Ireland-ish island. And I love, Ireland, Scotland, and everything. So I love that book. But yeah, so that would be really cool too. I think that would be I can see that being a very like dark, beautiful, just lush, movie and everything like that. So yeah.
Now, for Neverwhere, did you like the adaptation better or the book better?
Well, and I actually have not watched the BBC one, which is ridiculous, but I just have not gotten around to like finding it and whatever. I tried to listen to the, and I think they have both the audio and then they have a film version, I think, so I've definitely not watched the film version, but the audio, I tried to listen to it and I was like, I don't know, it just wasn't working for me, but I'm like really weird about audiobooks. So a character doesn't sound like exactly like I thought they would. I can't even. So I've never gotten into audiobooks for that reason. I'm sure one day I'll find one that I like, but yeah, so that's definitely on my list. I need to actually watch that. So
yeah, I'm kind of embarrassed to say I have went through an audiobook that I wanted to listen to and just listen to the sample to see if the voice was something that I could see that character being.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't, I'm like, it's nothing against the person or the voice. It's just not going to mesh with me. And I'm not going to like it, or I'm just not going to listen to it and get invested. So
For sure.
I do want to ask, because you are the first that I've interviewed to go through this. You said your agent actually contacted you once you had quit querying, which is usually how it happens. What did she say decided to make her reach out to you?
Well, and it was just that I had queried her like 9 months previously, and it was just simply that like that was when she was able to get to it, because agents I know are just so busy, and she just hadn't read it before then apparently. So like so
just
yeah, so it was just a very like, you know, to me like 9 months was like a long time or whatever, and you know I had decided to move on and figured I wasn't getting any more responses, but she just you know had finally had a chance to read it and really liked it, and so
yeah, 9 months is kind of crazy. I know when I went to the Colorado Writers Conference 2010, 2011, when I first started my YouTube channel, they were talking about, you know, if you don't hear from me within 6 months, then I've probably read it by then, but that's how big my backlog is right now. And I just remember thinking, all these people that don't know this are thinking that they're totally being ignored or that their book isn't great, and that's just like adding exponentially to their insecurities.
for
And
sure.
that's horrible. Like, that needs to be on every traditional publisher's website. Like, give us a year to get back to you.
Right, for sure. Yeah, I think that, I mean, because some of them are, I think the thing that's crazy is a lot of agents are like, I respond in anywhere from 60 seconds to a year, and you're like, it's so broad. So so I think it's hard to querying is pretty brutal, hard, I know, for most people, and like, you know, there's always that disappointment. So I don't mean to say that I wasn't like disappointed every time I got a rejection, because I've gotten like hundreds of rejections, or like you said, the no answers are the worst. Like I'd almost rather get a rejection than just like not to hear at all. So so I just had kind of thought that I don't even remember at the time like what if she had listed like her usual turnaround time. But anyway, I know they're busy people. That's a crazy life. So
makes you wonder how long their inbox is.
Yeah.
Like, I get mad if I've got 4 unopened emails. Like,
right.
Insane. So how was the process with her? Was it just you would touch base all the time, or she would let you know if she heard anything?
Yeah, she was definitely in, you know, all agents have kind of like a different style or whatever, but she was definitely kind of the, you know, we worked together initially to do, you know, she had some minor edits she wanted me to do. And then, you know, we would go on sub. For the first book, you know, for Huntress Found, she asked me, she said, do you want to get your rejection letters, or do you just want me to send you a summary? And I said, well, I don't have strong feelings either way. So I said, you can just send me a summary. That's fine. But then, you know, she pretty much I wouldn't hear something for like a while, because the sub process can take, it's kind of the same thing with trying to get an agent. You might hear back really quickly, or it might be forever, like months and months and months. So so I would usually touch bases with her if I hadn't heard anything in like 3 months, and just say, hey, what's the latest, and you know, whatnot. So then for the second book, I was definitely like, hey, just go ahead and forward me my rejections, because I just wanted that more regular context again than not hearing anything. Because if she had an update, she would definitely like reach out or whatever, but it was like the not hearing just kind of drove me a little nutty. So, and again, that's very typical with, you know, with like agents, you know, whatever. So that's not anything about her specifically. But yeah, and I actually kind of, just because I am again kind of weird, I liked getting the rejection letters, because not only was it more frequent, but some of them were quite lovely. Like, because again, with A Blood Earth Magic especially, like that one, I think the one I liked the most was, and I can't remember which publisher it was, one of the big 5, and they're like, this is a beautiful book and you're a great writer, but we require a unanimous vote. And it's just, it got some votes, but it also just didn't get quite there all the way, you know? And so to me, I was like, well, that to me, if there's even like one editor at a big 5 that's like, I love this, I voted for it, that just makes me feel good. So, you know, even though it ultimately didn't work out, it was still just kind of nice, you know. But it definitely, you know, it sucks when you get one of those, you know, rejections. Even if it is a good rejection, you know, it's still, you're like, oh, you know, it just never feels great. But yeah,
I think it's important, you know, being able to get that far and have somebody champion in your work, like to see that it's not that you wrote bad, or that, you know, you're hoping to get an agent because it'll give you some free editing and stuff like that. It's affirming as far as helping you know that you have a good book, but it's also grounding in a way that you're getting there, but you're not quite there, you know?
Right.
So you don't get a big head.
Yeah. That is quite true. So,
is there anything that I didn't touch on that you want to?
Nope. I think just this was a great conversation. You know, I think kind of just as we sort of touched on a couple times, my, you know, latest series just launched on October 26th, so very recently, and so that one will be super fun, fantasy western, very feminist. I'm calling it, you know, Good Omens meets Westworld with a feminist twist. So if you like some kick-ass women, you know, set in the 1800s. So I won't call it really. I'm not a historian, and I'm not great at doing like tons of historical research, but it is, you know, it has enough of a fun kind of, you know, flair, and I've put a few fun, just very tiny sprinkle of steampunk elements into it. It's an alternate history, so I wanted to make it clear that this wasn't, you know, I mean, if the angels and demons and things didn't make it clear, I wanted to make it very clear that this, you know, wasn't exactly like even the United States that, you know, would have originally been in the 1800s. So, but yeah, so that's just kind of my latest thing. And definitely people look at the YouTube trailer because that is super fun. And
yeah, I will definitely have the links to all your socials and the book trailer down below in the comments, in the cards. But you have your newest series, The Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, like you said, came out October 26th of 2020. But then you have the Zion Star series, the Timekeeper's War series, and the Quinn Chronicles. So there are plenty for people to read and love, and so make sure you go check out her Amazon page and get one or all of those books. Now, even though I'm going to have it linked down below, in case people can't click on it, would you tell them where they can find you, what your handles are?
Yeah, and my main web address is alexiachamberlynn.com. So, you know, that has all my social links. But yeah, but my handles pretty much everywhere is just AA Chamberlynn. Chamberlynn is spelled kind of weird, chamber, and then Lynn at the end. So I don't use Twitter much these days, but definitely I'm on Instagram and Facebook. So yeah, I'll add too that those series, the first book in each series is free. So you can, you know, just read them and see what kind of tickles your fancy. So yeah, thank you again so much for having me on here. So this was fun.
I'm definitely glad that you came. I didn't know about the agent part, so I had to come up with some questions that weren't in my questions for you, because I know as indies, whether you're just starting out or you've been there, that's always in the back of your mind, the querying process and trying to go traditional. So I appreciate that you've gone through that to give us a little bit of insight. So I will have all your links down below, and for those of you watching on YouTube, make sure you leave a comment. Tell us if you have any questions for her. I can shoot them to her and ask her later. This is the last podcast for 2020, so I hope you've enjoyed the first few that we had and the amazing guests that we had. And I'm so glad to end the year with Miss A.A. Chamberlynn, and make sure you go check out any and all of her books. I'm reading The War of Daisies, and it's amazing. So I was going to say they are amazing, but the other ones aren't out yet. It is amazing. So yeah, I hope y'all have had a decent 2020 and to a better 2021. Thank you guys, and goodbye.
Bye.
Hi guys, I hope you enjoyed this interview, and there are many more to come, so make sure you hit that like and subscribe button if you're on YouTube, and make sure you follow this podcast, the Afterthought Podcast, for more authors and entrepreneurs, and see how they went through the trials and tribulations in their life and made their life a success. If you'd like to be a guest, make sure you hit all of my links down below, and I will have them in the show notes as well to get a hold of me, or you can simply email theunknownseries@gmail.com and ask anything you'd like, or tell me a little bit about yourself and things you've overcome to get to where you are now. With that said, I will have this podcast going every month. So until the next episode, guys, this has been the Afterthought Podcast, and thanks for joining. Bye now.